I'm thrilled to be back at Reload Greece. A huge thank you to the team. Fantastic progress through the year, just as a side note. But I'm mostly thrilled today to be the one asking questions on the hottest topic of our times, if I may say. From a personal perspective, a week ago, I was working for the biggest financial data vendor, a public company. Just a week ago, through an LBO, because of AI, and we'll get to that in a sec, we're now Refinitiv, a global startup, as media is referring to us, 6 billion of one. What I left out of that piece is that Blackstone is the one backing this LBO. Why Blackstone is backing us? Because of the potential that we have in monetizing and commercializing data through AI and data science, blockchain. So welcome, and thank you so much. If we may start for a quick intro, obviously we did that, but I think it's important to hear your views and where you're coming from before we drill into the fireside chat, as we said.
Okay, thank you, Christina, and thank you for inviting me here today. Really proud to be in Reload Greece. The event so far has been really exciting. It's my first time, and it looks like already it's not going to be the last one. So yes, a bit of introduction, as already the gentleman said earlier. I have 25 plus years experience in this field. Started with AI in the early 90s. Before it became the buzzword that is these days. So I've seen the whole cycle, so to speak. I've also been involved in blockchain technology for the past 5 years. Other than doing maybe close to 11, 12 years in academia and postdoc and PhDs and all these kind of things, I also involved close to 12 years with large multinationals from different industries, consumer electronics, financial services, IT consulting, and also in energy. So I have a kind of a very broad spectrum of where these things applied really in the real world, which is slightly different than the academic lab.
Fantastic, and you really hit at the point there on a buzzword. I think everybody's talking about AI. What is the current state in your, from your view?
I think the current state, it's really we're in a very good state. With regards to where AI used to be. And it would just make a small historical parenthesis. AI has been around for close to 65 years. So if it was a person, it would be a pensioner by now, or maybe approaching pensioner stage, since they always keep pushing them further ahead. But what is happening lately, especially since 2012, there was kind of a seminal work that was published by some scientists in the University of Toronto, is that now we have this kind of a vicious cycle that we have so much data out there that we can actually use this data to train and create better algorithms. These algorithms, in respect, they create better user experiences and user interfaces, which then goes back to the whole cycle. The users are more excited and they provide more data. So AI nowadays is becoming some kind of a buzzword, as we said earlier, because there is a lot of tools available on how you can apply artificial intelligence to achieve relatively quick gains which you wouldn't be able to do before. It was a scientific field that's gone maybe used mostly for the privilege, whereas nowadays it's more of a commodity in certain industries. So that's really exciting. However, if I may add also in parentheses that one needs to be careful of how to apply these technologies because in certain industries, you need to be conscious with regards to what is the known unknowns of AI. Most of modern AI is basically machine learning or modern incarnations of machine learning. If you're in this field, or maybe even picked up from the media, deep learning networks, but they do have certain issues with regards to wider applicability when it comes to how you explain how the network works and the decisions.
And obviously knowledge is one piece, but probably to this audience, investment and how big the investment should be in those areas. Do you see more and more coming in? How would you?
Yeah, I mean, you probably have heard in the media from, famous CEOs of large companies saying it's bigger than fire, and another one says it's bigger than fire and water, and, it goes on and on. Look, I've been around for too long not to believe in these kind of things. I mean, you can create, corporate value and shareholder value by saying whatever you want, but the truth of the matter is that the investment has to be there because this technology, first of all, when it comes to artificial intelligence, has been around for a long time. It's not going to go anywhere. It is an investment for the future. It's a technology with, again, the barrier to entry is relatively low, as it used to be 2-3 decades ago. It's something which can be applied pretty much across the whole range of your business. when it comes to how to touch your consumers, how do your product engineering, how do you identify propensity to buy if you're in the marketing, in terms of energy, how to do better transactions in the financial service industry, how to really smooth your processes. It's basically a Swiss Army knife that can be applied in pretty much the entire spectrum of a business.
And a true game changer, as you said. If we may be a little bit more specific as to any stories that come to mind, preferably success stories, but where did we apply AI and hopefully in a large scale?
Yeah, I think what's really interesting, and it's kind of maybe also close to your background, is that when it comes to alternative data, in the old days, especially in the financial services industry, which London is one of the global hubs, if not the global hub, used to be privilege of the very few, big quant funds and everything. But nowadays, alternative data are more or less available for free. And with a little bit of machine learning, not really too scientific, you can actually get insights using alternative data that normally you had to expect the quarterly earnings of companies to tell you what's going on. So you can figure out, for instance, you can track the shipments of goods from one part of the world to the other and figure out whether a specific product will hit its target and sell at a specific point. Also, with regards to financial advice, in this country, in other countries, you typically go to a financial advisor, but that's kind of maybe a high barrier for certain parts of the demographics. You can get automated financial advice, or robo-advisors, as is the marketing term they call it, which can actually give you pretty much the same results, even better for very low cost. Most of this is driven by data science and artificial intelligence, in particular machine learning algorithms.
Perfect. So just before we go into the blockchain piece a bit, you talked about fire and water. I would say wildfire for that matter. What would you say are the limitations currently in the AI space?
Yeah, well, the limitations is, first of all, up to recently, and this starts changing, there was too much focus on, as I said, one specific technique or artificial intelligence, which is basically deep neural networks, which despite on how well engineered they are, and this almost like scientifically is very well and mathematically elegant, they are very brittle, almost like the expert systems in the 80s. So just a small change in context can cause maladaptation of the algorithm, which essentially means you will get an answer which you wouldn't really expect. So one of the things that you need to be aware with regards to applying these technologies is knowing what do you need to get out of it and what kind of data you're going to provide. What is happening lately is that there is a combination of this kind of modern machine learning with a good old-fashioned AI, as we used to call it, which gives you one way of actually enhancing your system and be able to know to take the context into account. We're also seeing that data at the moment is also an Achilles heel. A lot of modern machine learning is really thrive on feeding with a lot of data, but at the same time, obviously that has some kind of a ceiling. There is, the law of diminishing returns. At some point, it doesn't really make it any better by giving more data. So what is happening lately for the past couple of years, at least, people are looking at data intelligence of way of feeding into the machine learning algorithms the right data, not really any kind of data. Other things you should be looking at is that artificial intelligence, because of so much exposure in the media, especially if you're looking at the very high level boards at multinationals having to make strategic decisions, there is always big confusion. So you need to be aware if you are using AI to maybe market your product, you're going to get a lot of exposure, but that will be maybe short-lived. You're going to get a lot of scrutiny further down the line. So be prepared for that. And then engineering and educating people about AI and what it can do, I think it's very important. There is a well-known dearth of engineers in machine learning and AI. However, compared to what I used to do when I was studying, there is a dearth of resources out there. From free online courses to qualified blogs, you can literally use your spare time, maybe 30 minutes, 1 hour every week, to just catch up with the basic terms, what it means. It really helps when you're confronted with identifying whether you have to use this solution or not.
So we would say that definitely it's not overhyped, or we really believe in AI and its future application?
We really believe. The thing is that AI, because of its maturity, as opposed to blockchain, we're going to move soon, been around for so long, AI has already been through 2 AI winters. For those of you in the field not really know what that means, basically means it was a period that was almost a near-death experience for the AI field, but somehow survived. The first one was around 60s, 70s, mostly academic community arguing among themselves about what is possible, what is not possible. The second one was purely down to money. in the early 90s because the world was really in a bad state at the time. People say, this overhype, if we're in a bubble stage, might bring another AI winter. I don't believe so. I think there's already too much investment into AI. Just over the past couple of years, I know there's a few VCs in the room that know the stats better than me, but more than 1,100 new AI companies were funded and raised more than $15 billion, which is more than the historical money they ever raised in equity rounds. Also, if you're looking at the world's economies and the AI nationalism as it emerges these days, from Chinese trying to overtake the Americans and all these kind of things, it's already $1 trillion business as we speak in 2018. It's essentially the biggest commercial opportunity you have at your disposal today.
Makes absolute sense. So being educated about it, but really believing in it, I think it's the way forward. Yeah. Being cautious of time and moving to the blockchain concept, again, another buzzword for many people, and I'm only talking from my field, it's almost equivalent to cryptocurrencies, and it sort of stops there. Can you take us a step back and actually talk a little bit about your views and the applications of blockchain in the real world?
Yeah, blockchain is totally different from AI in terms of, if there are both buzzwords. Blockchain has been around for maybe less than 10 years if you count as a starting point the Genesis block of Bitcoin in 2009. But if you are digging into things a little bit further, since the early 90s we have, Bitgold and other efforts to create some kind of a digital currency. Actually, the European Union, I remember one of my salary was based in a Q, a European currency unit, was actually a digital currency at the time, totally virtual. Everything was converted in pound sterling, but the idea of having some kind of a digital currency has been around for a while. But what brought everything together, and that's interesting about blockchain versus AI, is basically, apart from the Bitcoin, which really started the whole thing, it started straight after the crisis, the global financial crisis of 2008. And it's not surprising that the Genesis block of Bitcoin was actually launched on the 3rd of January 2009, which is when the Chancellor of the Exchequer in this country decided to throw a few more billions to the banks for basically not doing the job. So it started as a movement rather than just a technology innovation, because the facets of blockchain is cryptocurrency, is distributed networks. Nothing is really new and invented, but the combination of all of them together is what makes it so powerful. So the power of blockchain is essentially disintermediation and decentralization. So you don't have to trust a central party to conduct a transaction of any kind. Doesn't need to be a transaction monetary value. It can be a transaction in anything that can be tokenized digitally. And you have to imagine here, we're talking about tokenization of things like forests. There is a forest in Scandinavia. People have tokenized the forest, and they sell the carbon monoxide that you can generate from the forest. You're talking about sovereign ID and ID service on blockchain. You are in full control of your identification, as opposed to going to different agencies. There is so much talk about bureaucracy these days in Greece that you have to prove who you are and do all this paperwork. With blockchain, there is things with regards to shipping industry. One of the largest, definitely one of the most historical vessel registers in the world, the Lloyd's Register, they already started going into blockchain to have register their vessels into a blockchain. Because essentially blockchain gives you immutability, which means that it's a kind of a database which is distributed across so many different people, so many different nodes, that everybody has a copy, and that nobody can change without everybody agreeing to it. That's the massive conceptual change, which, if I'm allowed, going back to the business discussion, one of the trickiest things to do blockchain is not so much to explain the technology, but to convince the boards and people to invest that actually this is a business model change.
Absolutely important point, because you mentioned the shipping industry. We talk about the financial data and finance, but we see blockchain as, exactly as you said, as a concept applying to the whole spectrum of the industries, and people are actually making money as we speak. And I think at a later stage, not today because we're already past our 5-minute flag, but it's a discussion on its own how we can actually apply the blockchain piece in an entrepreneurial point of view.
Yeah, again, as with AI, the blockchain community is extremely broad. Everybody is welcome in from different industries. You could probably argue the AI or machine learning community is kind of very geeky to a certain extent. Maybe not everybody's cup of tea, but in blockchain it's totally different. You learn from social entrepreneurship, pretty much every industry is affected. The technical aspects of it, they might be a bit difficult to deal with, but you also have to take into account that it's a community that the technical foundations are extremely broad. We have some of the largest, actually the largest consortia that support blockchain technology as a foundation are in the blockchain community. We're looking at consortia with more than 500 company members. The open source tools of blockchain are by far the most committed in the world. If you are in kind of a technical domain and you're figuring out how many people contribute to code, the source code on blockchains are the biggest in the world. So yeah, it's definitely much, much easier to get into blockchain than, let's say, getting into machine learning.
Thank you very much. Transparency, automation, the way forward, and technology overall. It's been a pleasure. Do we have 2 minutes for questions?
Hi, my name is Myra. I just wanted to ask you, what's your favorite blog or source of information to get started and get information about blockchain?
About blockchain, yeah. It's difficult because I don't have one favorite blog. I have bookmarks on many different devices, which are well over 30 or 40. But I would say go to the main media sites like Cointelegraph or CoinDesk. And from there, just do a spider search. So basically follow links from there. You can find there are some very interesting thought leaders in blockchain. Fun enough, most of them based in London, don't know why. And you can follow their thoughts on leadership. And also attend events in blockchain. To the best of my knowledge, a lot of them are free to attend. Yeah.
Hi, I'm Georgina. I was just wondering, from a policy perspective, are there regulations in place? Are there certain agencies with regards to AI and blockchain? Because obviously it's like a massive change. So I was wondering whether, if you know of governments applying regulations on a country or EU level.
Yeah, actually the answer is yes and yes. In both fields there are. I'm not surprised for AI because things at some point a couple of years ago were going a little bit uncontrollable with regards to where we apply AI. In certain countries and regions of the world, that side towards the east, we can't name them, things are still uncontrollable. So yes, there is a massive debate and momentum over the past maybe year and a half now with regards to ethics and AI. Best starting point is European Union and from there national policies. Whether these regulations will stifle or help us to progress further, it's everybody's kind of, it's a billion-dollar question. Also, another thing which is happening lately, which is not that good, is that there's a lot of what is called AI nationalism, which is countries define their own strategic plans for AI, which somehow they're not exactly compatible with other countries, even the neighbors' policies. So, I don't know, maybe it's going to turn a bit ugly before it's going to smooth again. That's the AI bit. Now, the blockchain bit, definitely there is, because don't forget, historically started from the financial services, which is a heavily regulated industry, especially after the crisis, became tenfold more regulated. So regulations is one of the things that, first of all, you had the boom of cryptocurrencies last year, and then you had the bust this year. So regulation is more important to blockchain than in AI because it has the potential in certain industries, at least, to completely block the applications of blockchain. Not block for applying it technically, but block in the minds of people and potential investors. However, we do have a lot of progress with regards to regulations for blockchain applications in certain industries. And I think in the next couple of years, things will be much more able to navigate with regards to regulations, especially when it comes to financial services.
Thank you very much. It's been a pleasure. Thank you very much.
Welcome. Thank you.